folks, Kdog here. I'm on vacation for like until not this coming Monday, but the following Monday after that. But so I'm gonna try to squeeze in some movies here to watch and just have some fun. And they're just going to be completely random, and I just have the time off. I'm working on some other things. I'm trying to work on some other projects and things like that. Trying to figure out career, what I want to do. I know I'm kind of, I'm 41, but I have to make some choices in order to, and some actions to help, give a little bit more income to the financial situation that's going on right now. And because it's a tough time right now, financially, but I can only do what Patrick David says. He has the most positive outlook on things. The future looks bright. The future looks bright. So, but in the meantime, we're going to have some fun. Tonight we're going to watch, I've watched this movie before. I've watched it several times. And tonight we're going to have some fun. We're going to go back to the year 1982. June of 1982 was when this film was released. June 4th of 1982. It was released the same day as Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And it was released exactly 1 week before the producer of this film would release the highest grossing movie of all time at that time. Very, very busy. This particular person was very, very busy. So, who am I talking about? Well, it was Steven Spielberg. And in order for him to make the second movie, he had to take the producer's credit, because he originally wanted to direct this film. But a contract negotiation prevented him from directing, but he found out that he could maintain producer. That would be Steven Spielberg. So he had to hire a director. And he hired Tobe Hooper, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy. And what's the film I'm talking about? I'm talking about 1982's Poltergeist. Yeah, in case you haven't seen this movie, do strap in. It's a lot of fun. The film is rated PG, but this was 1982 PG. Matter of fact, when this film first came out, it was slapped with the R rating because of its intensity. And matter of fact, a lot of parents did their best to keep their kids from watching this movie, but they still watched it anyway. And so, strap in, grab some snacks if you like, but there's a scene that's in this movie that's pretty grotesque, that will haunt you from eating steak for a while. So, strap in, because they're here, and it knows what scares you. Poltergeist, 1982, released by MGM, produced by Steven Spielberg, directed by Tobe Hooper. Also starring Jo Beth Williams and Craig T. Nelson. So, Poltergeist. So that was Poltergeist from 1982, produced by Steven Spielberg and directed by Tobe Hooper. Now, this film, to me, has always been a lot of fun. It's always, and also people do get this confused with it being a Steven Spielberg directed movie. He didn't direct it, even though he was on set. He was on set every day. And he was even working closely with the visual effects house, Industrial Light and Magic, to complete the effects. and also Spielberg's own editor, Michael Kahn, was the editor of this film. Now, for the movie E.T., Spielberg used Carol Littleton as the editor. That way, Michael Kahn could focus on Poltergeist. But anyway, the film opens up with the introduction of the family. We see on the TV is the national anthem. Now this was a thing that was normal with that was normal of the 80, ever since broadcast television was invented, when they would have their programming sign off of the programming day, they always closed with the national anthem. And so when the channel goes blank, the dog goes through and introduces the whole family. We see a mom, we see an older sister, we see a brother, and young Carol Ann. Well, Carol Ann is awakened. She goes down to the living room with the TV and she starts yelling and talking to the TV. And the parents are thinking, well, that's odd. Why is she behaving like this? And then it cuts to a bright sunny day. The camera's panning through the neighborhood and you see the suburbs of Cuesta Verde, the name of the community. And all the houses look the same. They're all built the same. And that's typical of the suburbs, like a housing addition, or definitely in the suburbs, in the neighborhoods that everybody has the same home, and it's just a uniform look. They're probably, like, if they're if they were in a housing addition, a lot of times homes, they have what's called a covenant, which means that your home has to look exactly like the next one, so everything looks neat and uniform and whatnot. And so we see that going on in this film. And so, and we meet, of course, we've met the Freeling family. We see the neighborhood, we see all the other neighborhood kids and friends coming over to watch a football game. And this poor family, they have got all kinds of problems. Their neighbor even has their TV remote interferes with the Freeling TV, and and just so on and so forth. That's just the minor of their problems. What they're going to have what they have in this film. And every night that there's a thunderstorm that comes. At least the 2 nights that we see. There's a thunderstorm that comes, and it scares the kids, causing them to go to sleep with mom and dad. It's still the same thing happens. Everybody falls asleep, they leave the TV on, national anthem plays, goes to a blank channel. The youngest daughter, Carol Ann, is waking up again. But this time, there is actually stronger activity. She reaches her hand out, and there's all of a sudden something almost comes out to grab her out of the TV. Leaves a burn mark into the back wall. It shakes the house, and then she utters the very famous line, "They're here." And the mom's trying to figure out the next day, what do you mean, who's here? And the little girl just says, "TV people." And even more strange things happen, like the chairs in the kitchen stack vertically. And of course, it gets stranger and stranger. They're placing objects in the middle of the kitchen floor. It slides across the room. And then finally, that night, while there's a distraction, that a tree busts through the window, takes the brother, and then that's all a distraction just to take Carol Ann into the closet. And next thing you know, she is talking through the TV through a blank channel. And then the dad goes and finds these investigators, these parapsychologists, and stuff starts manifesting. And the psychologists know that something's up. There's a reason why they took this little girl. And so then they next go get a form of, they find a little woman who is it's hard to describe what she is, but other than that, she's there to cleanse the house. But she forewarns that, you know, she's to help guide these souls that they don't know that they're dead. They don't know their spirits. That they don't know that they're deceased, but there is one that is out to destroy. And so they have to figure out a way to get the daughter out by going into that closet and coming down the stairs through a rope. And it's a very intense scene, what's going on, and there's some very grotesque things that happen. As a matter of fact, one of the parapsychologists has a hallucination where he rips his own face off. The movie does have a happy ending, where the family does make it through and survive. But like any horror movie, there has to be sequels. And so this followed up in 1986 with Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, and Poltergeist 3. Unfortunately, this movie has had a bad mark against it. It's believed to be one of the most cursed movies of all time. Now, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that's kind of Hollywood kind of stirring things up. But some strange things have happened. So, with just this film alone, 2 of the children died. They died mysterious deaths. Actress Dominique Dunne, who played the older sister, shortly after the film's release, she was tragically murdered by a psychotic ex-boyfriend. And so tragically her life was over. And then the young actress who played Carol Ann, Heather O'Rourke, she made the entire trilogy of movies, but by the end, actually when the third film was in post-production or near end production, I can't remember which, but Heather O'Rourke sadly passed away with intestinal stenosis, which is basically a blockage in her intestines. And However, it was misdiagnosed as the early stages of Crohn's disease. Unfortunately, that was not the case. She had a blockage in her intestines that could have easily been surgically removed, but was misdiagnosed. And sadly, Heather O'Rourke is no longer with us. The film has garnered this attention just, but a part of it, I think Hollywood just kind of stirred things up. The only thing that I have heard, well, there's a couple things I've heard, is that is Jo Beth Williams. She said that every night or every day that when she would go to set, she would have picture frames up in her apartment where she was living at the time. And when she came home, all the picture frames would be out of center. They would be tilted to one side. And the other thing was, when they filmed the sequel, they had been shooting all day, and when they went to see the dailies, the footage came out black. Like, didn't capture anything. But yeah, it's there's some strange stories that go with it, but some of it is coincidental. Some of it maybe not, but I can't pinpoint that to exactly. But I don't think Heather O'Rourke's death was necessarily a curse or anything like that. It is a tragedy what happened to her, and it's a tragedy what happened to Dominic Dunn. Yeah, because nobody asked for that. She didn't. She seemed like in the film, she seems like she would have been an attractive girl that guys would have wanted to date, but unfortunately, it was a psychotic boyfriend that who was just a thief. And now, the other controversy that is with this film is who directed it. Okay? And I've been briefly talking about it. It's a Steven Spielberg production with a Tobe Hooper film. Okay? Spielberg was on set every day. And Spielberg is credited as screenplay by, along with two other writers. So, it's got Spielberg's hands all over it. So, it's going to feel Spielbergian. But Tobe Hooper is credited as director. And several of the cast and crew said that, well, this is a Steven Spielberg film. Or this is a Tobe Hooper film. It was just different answers depending on who you asked. And the cast would say, well, Steven's the director. But the truth was, the reason why is because in order for Steven Spielberg to make E.T., the deal that he signed with Universal Pictures was that he could not have his name attached as director to any other film, even that of a competing studio. So Poltergeist was taken to MGM as a Steven Spielberg production, because Steven Spielberg looked into, okay, I have this other movie, can I serve as producer? And turns out he could. He just could not direct. So, with that going on, Spielberg kind of ghost directed Poltergeist in some scenes. But it was not enough for him to be credited as the director. So Tobe Hooper was the director. And there was a long investigation by the Directors Guild of America. Was this a Steven Spielberg directed film or a Tobe Hooper directed film? And it was ruled a Tobe Hooper film. So that's what it is. Now, the third controversy was the film's rating. At this time, Spielberg especially had a lot of problems maintaining a PG rating because he felt that this film wasn't that bad for a younger audience to see, so he thought it could get by with a PG rating. Several of his movies ran into this issue. Jaws missed the R rating by a few frames of film being cut out. Now, there was no PG-13 at this time. Thank you, Steven Spielberg, for helping create the PG-13 rating, because the final straw was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So Spielberg had made Jaws. Got a PG rating just by taking out a few frames of film. Raiders of the Lost Ark narrowly escaped an R rating just by an addition of visual effects. The exploding head, yeah, couldn't show that. That's why there's a big pillar of fire that shoots up after the head explodes, which ILM had to add in to cover up the gruesomeness. And then you have Poltergeist, where the character of Marty ripping off his own face. But it was argued by protest that this is a hallucination. He doesn't really pull his own face off. It's a hallucination that the ghosts are toying with this man. They don't like him. So that almost got the film an R. Matter of fact, it did get it an R rating, but under protest and appeal, they were able to negotiate the PG rating, and Spielberg was banking on the PG rating as well as MGM. They really needed a PG rating to make this work. And of course, the film was a huge hit. It's a huge hit. It has several catchphrases in the film. It's been referenced in TV shows like South Park and various other, like The Simpsons, I think, and Family Guy. Family Guy did a straight up parody of this movie called Petergeist, in which Peter plans to build a movie theater onto his house and finds out there's like this little relic that's underneath the ground, and Stewie gets trapped into the TV, just like Carol Ann. So it was quite funny. So that was Poltergeist from 1982. Do check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun movie, and of course it has the positive message that the love of the family destroys evil. But yeah, check it out. Now let's move on to the next feature. Well, here it is. I'm back again. The last segment we just took a look at the movie Poltergeist. Well, here's another one you're going to want to put the kids away on. We're going to take a trip back to 1995 with this one. It is a Martin Scorsese follow-up to a well-known film that he made. Man, this vacation, I was focusing on two things, and one of the things I did, I'm still waiting on a reply back so I can actually participate and fill out some paperwork on, but they haven't contacted me yet. That was 2 days ago. But, so it is an answer, but we're just waiting to see what happens. I still got till Friday for them to properly respond. So, but that being said, I'm going to continue on with what my intention was. This vacation has just been just a relaxing of the mind, really. Just taking a breather and not have to kind of worry about day-to-day operation. And I was paid for it. So, but yeah, like I said, we're going to take a trip back in time to 1995, and this is a follow-up. I consider it a follow-up. Matter of fact, I also kind of consider it a little bit of a sequel to Scorsese's landmark film of the 1990s. Well, that film would be Goodfellas, but this film we're going to take a look at tonight. Again, put the kids away because this one is deserving of its R rating. It is from 1995, again, Martin Scorsese's Casino. Yeah, starring Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Sharon Stone. All loosely based on a true story, just like Goodfellas. It's also co-written by Nicholas Pileggi, who also co-wrote Goodfellas with Scorsese. And so, I think I'm going to talk after the film, but this is loosely based on a true story. Names have been changed because some of the people were still alive at the time. Some of them are still alive. Yeah, so we'll take a look at this from Universal Pictures. It's a Martin Scorsese film, Casino. Well, that was Casino from 1995, directed by Martin Scorsese. Like I said, this film was loosely based on a true story. Some of the events are, and the reason why is because luckily in the Blu-ray version they have a documentary that was produced by the History Channel, and it's I think it was called True Crime Stories, and it told the story about it actually told the real story on who the people it was involved with. And it also, what it all kind of ties into is how the mob lost control of Las Vegas. So we see this going on, and Robert De Niro in the film plays Sam Ace Rothstein. He is loosely based on the real-life person of Frank Lefty Rosenthal. And Ace Rothstein he's placed in charge of the Tangiers Hotel and Casino. And he's been able to make a living, be successful at it. The first problem that he has is that he's been unsuccessful at achieving a gaming license, which is one of the laws that Vegas has, is that you have to have a gaming license in order to continue, to manage a casino. That's one of the problems. The second problem is he has a boyhood friend that is making his way, that has made his way to Vegas to say, hey, I want to come out here, I want to start doing business. Well, that's all well and good, but this boyhood friend was a made guy for the mafia. And very quickly, the crime starts to escalate. Now, that would be Joe Pesci's character, Nicky Santoro, who is loosely based on Anthony the Ant Spilatro. Now, and Sharon Stone plays Sam Rothstein's wife, Ginger. And that's loosely based on a woman by the name of Jerry, who was Frank Rosenthal's wife. She had a massive drinking problem and drug problem. And, of course, blew all the money that... Now, I can't exactly tell you... That's all I can tell you, like, the big differences between what actually happened and the film. Now, the film is fairly realistic in its portrayal, but however, the story and events don't exactly add up. And as a matter of fact, I would encourage people to look up on YouTube Michael Franzese. He knows pretty much most of the Scorsese mob movies, like Goodfellas, Casino, and The Irishman. He knows a little bit more about them. Matter of fact, Michael Franzese was briefly portrayed in Goodfellas as when they're panning, when the camera's panning and introducing all the little mob guys, and he says, and you got Mikey Francese. Okay, so that's loosely supposed to be him, but it is what it is. So the Casino, to me, has always been Goodfellas Part 2, even though it's totally different people, but it's, I mean, by totally different people by the characters, but it is De Niro, Pesci, and Sharon Stone's original. Matter of fact, Sharon Stone was nominated for an Academy Award for her role in this movie. She didn't win it, but she definitely goes off the wall in this film, you know, and that's the portrayal of a junkie. Now, I don't think critics like this one as well as Goodfellas, but I think it's up there. I mean, it's really not a sequel, but I think it's pretty close to be calling Goodfellas Part 2. But even though it's really not. But it's because it's done in a very, very similar tone. Even though I will say that this film does tend to be... I love how this film was lit. Robert Richardson, who is the director of photography on this movie, does a fantastic job with it. And the lighting, especially in the casino scenes, it's bright. It's very bright, lit up, like Vegas itself. Even though what is what happens in the film is very, very dark. And Joe Pesci definitely makes... He was known for, because of his role in Goodfellas. I think that's why he was cast in this, because Santoro and the character in Goodfellas, I can't think of the name of the character offhand, but I've seen Goodfellas a number of times. But that character that he plays, you know, the hothead, and it's very, very similar. The characters meet similar ends, that their run comes to a tragic end. It doesn't turn out very well for them. The only thing is that I know that Michael Franzese has said about Anthony Spilatro was that his end was like the end in Casino, but the location was completely different. It was at a it was not in a cornfield by any stretch of the imagination. It was in a basement just outside of Chicago. And he was buried in a cornfield. But yeah, check out Michael Franzese, what he has to say about Casino, and it's also part of the story why how corporations took over as well, because the mob, they went overboard, they went overkill with what they were doing, and a lot of it had to do with the skim. And what the skim was is that they would, like, okay, the patrons that would come in to play the games and all that stuff, you know, the point was to keep the players coming back and spending and spending and spending and spending. And so these mob guys would go into the count room, and they would take several $100,000 in cash, put them in briefcases, and then take them back to the bosses. And part of that was, and why that was illegal, was because the taxes. That money, all that money was taxed. The casino was taxed. So they didn't have to pay the taxes, or they didn't get hurt as bad on taxes if they took some of that cash out. And of course, the mob guys pocketed all of it. And that's what helped fund, like, the Teamsters unions that was going on out there. But also, there's some... So, Casino's every time it's on AMC, I tend to want to stop and watch a little bit of it. But I also have the Blu-ray here. Now, this is the old school Blu-ray. As a matter of fact, I looked up as the player was playing it, I didn't realize that the video codec was in VC1. If you know anything about Blu-ray, the video codec, there's VC1, AV, and AVC. AVC is usually the better transfers, but this was VC1. I think this is because at the time Universal was using, they were putting out stuff on Blu-ray and HD DVD, and so they were using the VC1 codec, which would have been perfect for the HD DVD format, which died in the early 2010s. Or when was, no, the late 2000s. Anyway, it was a long time ago, and we not too many people I know have HD DVDs anymore. But also this film, there is a ton of other actors and cameos from people in this film. So you had the main actors, Robert De Niro, Sharon Stone, and Joe Pesci, but also you have Don Rickles playing the casino manager, Billy, and you have Alan King playing the head of the Teamsters Union, and Kevin Pollak plays the actual guy that's in the head of the casino, but he had to obey what the mob was saying too, even though he had nothing to do with the mob. Who else was in here? James Woods, he plays Sharon Stone's junkie boyfriend. But also, who else was? Dick Smothers from the Smothers Brothers was in this. As well as L.Q. Jones playing the county commissioner. And, well, Joe Bob Briggs, a.k.a. John Bloom. Well, his real name is John Bloom, but a.k.a. Joe Bob Briggs is in Casino, has a small part as a guy who's kind of a screwy casino operator. Like he's a guy on the floor just kind of watching over people, and he's not very good at his job. and anytime Casino gets brought up with Joe Bob Briggs at a convention, he goes, "I'm the one that brought that whole organization down." But yeah, Casino, do check it out. If you want a little bit more censor-friendly version, anytime it's on AMC, they play it a ton. That's when they clean up the language on that stuff. But other than that, do check it out. It's one of the great. I wouldn't say it's one of the great, but it's a great mob movie. If you like that stuff, it's not everybody's into. I appreciate the greatness of The Godfather, and that is a great film, but you can't count out Scorsese. And as a matter of fact, it was Brian De Palma who said when he made I forget the film that he made. I think it was Blowout, and it came out around the same time that Raging Bull came out, and De Palma said, "I made the best film I know how to make with Blowout," and then he goes, "Man, there's always Scorsese." So yeah, Casino. So let's move on to the next feature. Well. Continuing on with the video. The last segment I showed you, I was on vacation, so I was able to get in a few movies, but I was too busy doing other things, and so that's why you didn't see a boatload of films. You're not seeing a boatload of films coming on this video. So this is stretched over about almost a month period, but I was trying to do some other things. But it occurred to me, I had plans to do another film, because the next video, I am actually going to start the Christmas segment that I want to do. And so with that, I need to wrap this one up. And of course, we're getting ready to celebrate Thanksgiving next week. So I thought it would be just, to wrap this one up. But it occurred to me, according to Facebook, and I didn't realize this except for one of them, is that it's a couple anniversaries of some movies. Some big ones in the animation field. Yeah, so this first one we're going to watch tonight celebrates its 30th anniversary. That's a big one. That's a big one. Well, what would that be? Well, from 1995, released by Walt Disney Pictures, a Pixar Animation Studios film, Toy Story, the first one. Yeah, this is a big deal. And a matter of fact, they just dropped the trailer for the new Toy Story coming out this summer, I believe. And we're all curious to see how that's going to tie up, because there's fans that are going, what are they going to do? But let's go back in time to the original Toy Story from 1995. It came out on this day that I am recording this, November the 22nd in 1995. Came out that weekend was Thanksgiving weekend, and it was released the Wednesday before. Because if you think about it, this happens on Christmas as well. The movie theaters don't close on Thanksgiving. Instead, what do? You go and celebrate, you go have your meal or whatever, you get together with your families. Well, what are you doing in the evening? Let's go to the movies. So, for its 30th anniversary, we're going to take at the original Toy Story from 1995. Here is Woody and Buzz and their first adventure. So, let's go. Okay, so that was Toy Story from 1995. And that was quite the groundbreaking movie for the time when it came out. Because up until that time, the main thing that was capturing the focus of animation was 2D animation. And Disney was still running wild with their hit movies that like The Lion King and Aladdin and so on and so forth. As a matter of fact, they were getting that the following summer in '96. They were getting ready to release The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and when I saw this movie, that's the movie that they were advertising for that spring, as well as I think Balto, which was a Steven Spielberg production that was animated. But again, it was all 2D, hand-drawn animated films. Toy Story kind of, I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, but it did what no one expected to do. And it was something that was very new for the time, because again, animation was primarily 2D with some 3D elements to it, and computer animation was regulated to live action films, because by that time movies like Jurassic Park, T2, The Mask, and so on and so forth, I think even Babe had come out by that time. Which were digital visual effects. So here comes Toy Story, which is 100% CGI. And no one at that time really knew who Pixar Animation Studios were. To give you a brief history about about Pixar animation. This t-shirt I'm wearing, this is the 50th anniversary for Industrial Light and Magic t-shirt. Now, what's that got to do with Pixar animation? Well, Pixar was a part of Lucasfilm originally. It was originally founded by Lucasfilm, and there was a gentleman by the name of Ed Catmull who was working in the computer division. They developed what was called the Pixar computer. And so George Lucas owned and operated, or helped found, own and operate Pixar. Primarily used for visual effects, digital filmmaking and visual effects. That's what he wanted it for. And so if you see movies like Young Sherlock Holmes, The Abyss, Terminator 2, even Willow, that was the Pixar computer that helped ILM make those visual effects. Now, when Lucasfilm made Howard the Duck, George Lucas made Howard the Duck, the movie bombed so bad that George Lucas had to sell parts of the company in order to stay afloat. Well, Pixar was one of them. And so he sold it to Steve Jobs. Yeah, the Apple guy? Yeah, went to Steve Jobs. And the other reason why Lucas had sold Pixar, there was kind of a breakaway. Like the staff who was working in the computer division, they wanted to make animated features, while George Lucas just wanted it for visual effects. So I have a movie that bombed bad, and they want to go off and make their own projects, sell it to Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs ends up taking it and making, say, hey, do what you'd like to do. And so they start off making shorts. So they start making short films, little short films. And they thought, well, maybe we can actually develop a story to tell as feature length. So that led to Toy Story. Now, it gets picked up by Walt Disney Pictures. And who was running Walt Disney Pictures at the time? Jeffrey Katzenberg, who would go on to help create DreamWorks Animation, their competitor. So, yeah, it's kind of a funny story about Pixar and what led to Toy Story. And when they made Toy Story, it was like there's no looking back. Now, 2D animation was still popular at the time. It didn't just happen overnight. 2D animation was still quite popular. Like I said, when this played in the theater, and I remember seeing this opening weekend, Disney was advertising The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which was going to be their latest 2D animated film. And they continued on with Mulan and Hercules and Tarzan, as well as DreamWorks had the movie Prince of Egypt. But very quickly, DreamWorks got out of the 2D animation and went right into 3D with Ants, and then Shrek, and then so on and so forth. But if it wasn't for Disney and Pixar making Toy Story, they wouldn't have been able to do. Nobody else would have been able to do a 3D animated film, and this proved to be successful. And like I said, I was there opening weekend, sitting in a movie theater in Muncie, Indiana. Unfortunately, that theater is no longer in existence. It got demolished before COVID, way before COVID. I forget when it got demolished. It got demolished around the mid 2000s, actually. And there's now a Ruby Tuesdays that sits on the property where that theater once stood. But anyway, but yeah, Toy Story. I remember seeing it and was so excited to go to school the next day to tell people about it. So yeah, ended up being a big hit. And of course, ever since then, I've been a Toy Story fan and looking forward to Toy Story 5, which is coming out this summer in 2026. The trailer is online. Do check it out on YouTube. They're introducing devices, electronic devices in this one. So we'll see how the toys deal with that. And of course, a little bit of the history of, this would make the 5th Toy Story in the whole saga. So they followed it up in 1998, 1999 with Toy Story 2, and then Toy Story 3 in 2010, and then there was Toy Story 4, and they've since handed off the toys to another kid. So at first, the first 3 movies, it was Andy who had possession of the toys, but by Toy Story 3, Andy donated the toys to a daycare center in which we meet and fall in love with a little girl by the name of Bonnie. And the toys go to live with Bonnie, and now we're growing up with Bonnie. So yeah, that was Toy Story from 1995. Kicked off a new realm of animation, which we currently see today. As a matter of fact, there's competition and from other studios. There's even competition within Disney Studios, because now even every single Walt Disney feature animation movie that comes out, it is a 3D CGI movie. And with the last one, that was The Princess and the Frog, which was in 2009, but that was the last one of the 2D. Now everybody's CGI and happy, right? Well, I wish I could say that, but let's go back in time even further with the next feature. Okay, well, also making its anniversary appearance on this day, November the 22nd of 2025. It is the 34th anniversary of a movie that helped bring back animation to what it could be. I'm talking about Disney's classic from 1991. It is Beauty and the Beast. Yes, this movie was quite the landmark when it originally was released, and set records, set standards, and yeah, like I said, it broke all kinds of box office records, and both critically and financially. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the film. So from 1991, released by Walt Disney Pictures, from Walt Disney Feature Animation, Beauty and the Beast. So that was Beauty and the Beast from 1991. Was a huge hit back at that time, and you have to understand where Disney animation was at that time. Animation was pretty much dead. It took movies like Oliver and Company and The Little Mermaid as stepping stones. Each one was financially successful, but they were not huge hits. Beauty and the Beast was a hit. I mean, legitimately a box office hit, and played for a long time. I saw it back in the day in the theater, and I even saw it in second run. So that's how long it played, and that was in the summertime of 1992 when it went into second run. And so it was a huge hit back in the day. And again, animation, particularly Disney animation, was dead. It was like kind of regarded as, nothing. Because in 1985, Disney released one of the low points in Disney history, which was The Black Cauldron. It was a huge box office flop. And it cost, or almost, I forget how much that movie cost, but it cost a fortune to make. And they lost money. And so they had to kind of reinvent the wheel. And one of the things that helped them was home video. So they kind of looked around and decided, well, what would look good on a video box? And so they started coming up with titles right and left. Among that was Pocahontas, Little Mermaid, and then Beauty and the Beast came out of that. And Walt Disney himself tried to adapt this story when he was in his prime, but he couldn't figure it out. And it took a while for it to find its footing and eventually get off the ground and get made. They went through several directors, one of them being Richard Williams, who had just come off of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but he had turned it down and recommended a protege of his by the name of Richard Purdom. And so the whole production moved to England, where they were living, where those directors were living, and they decided, well, they were going to make the movie there. Well, after months of production and reels were coming back, and the studio was not impressed by what they saw. And so the orders were come back to Burbank and we'll start all over. And that's when things got better. Moving everything back home, and they found their directors in Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale, and they had some success with a little film and feature that they had done in Florida called Cranium Command. And so, why not bring on these guys as directors? And so, the studio said, if we stay on them, they won't mess this up, and it'll be okay. Well, it ended up being a huge hit. not only commercially, like financially, but also was a huge critic success. And it did one of the most strangest things that nobody had ever done. And they had done it, well, Disney had tried to do it before with The Little Mermaid, and it proved to be unsuccessful. But instead of, but with The Little Mermaid, what they did was they showed it at their little theater at the animation studio that they were working at the time. And so Jeffrey Katzenberg had this wild idea. What if we did that to the public? Instead of showing it in our studio, we actually rented a theater, took the unfinished version to some shopping mall theater, and invite kids to come see it. And it worked. But not only did they take it to a shopping mall theater, but they took it to the New York Film Festival. Unfinished, where everything was still in pencil test form. Some scenes were in full color, but a lot of it was in pencil test form, and it was a complete unfinished film. And it changed animation forever. At that moment, I would say. Because when the number "Be Our Guest" came up, they stood up and applauded. The audience did. Like they would at a Broadway play. And, of course, the film, it gets released, gets huge review, good critical praise, huge box office. And not only that, was the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Now think about that. And because of that, there's a category that they added to the Academy Awards. Best Animated Film. Thank you, Beauty and the Beast. And thank you for The Lion King for rethinking that. But it was Beauty and the Beast that was first. And it was the first animated film to be nominated for the Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Didn't win. It went to Silence of the Lambs, unfortunately. But there you go. I mean, but also the success was also bittersweet, because at the tail end of the film is a tribute to Howard Ashman. Howard Ashman was the co-songwriter, and I think he's even credited as being executive producer. I'm not quite sure of the film. He passed away about 6 months before the film was released. So he never saw the finished version. He passed away of AIDS. He was in his early 40s. And, passed away of AIDS. And, and of course, that's where it was bittersweet for the whole Disney production team at the animation studio, because the tail end has this tribute to him. It says, to Howard, to our friend Howard, who gave a mermaid her voice and a beast his soul. And because when they were developing it, they didn't know whose story it was going to be, because they said, is it Belle's story? Because she's the maiden here that's kind of needing a prince to fall in love with. And it was Howard Ashman who said, the person that goes through the most change in the story is who the story is about. So it's literally the Beast's story. And it was his idea to come up. You need to have the backstory telling him, you know, how this all came about, what caused him to become a beast. So yeah, it was Beauty and the Beast from 1991, and it still plays beautifully to this day. And of course, not only did it set those records of being the first animated film to be Best Picture at the Academy Awards, it's what sparked Disney to get into Broadway, and it was one of the first of their films that they adapted into as a Broadway musical. And then they would follow it with The Lion King and Aladdin, and eventually they turned Mary Poppins, and so yeah, it was, and of course 2017 they did a live action remake, and which kind of garnered some criticism at the time, because it was there were some things in it that were unnecessary, and I looked at that as to me it was a joke, like a badly executed joke, what they were putting in, but that's what they did. And with the live action remake, to me it's the better one of the live action remakes they've done. Still, I mean, Snow White they did, and it totally tanked. And they just announced that they canceled Tangled. So not everything needs to be remade or politically correct or any of that stuff. Just stick with the originals. But even this is this isn't the first adaptation of this story. I mean, there was a French film that was done back in the 30s or 40s. I have it on the Criterion, on a Criterion Blu-ray, but it's from an old fairy tale. So I think I'm going to end it right here with this segment. Let's go on to the next feature. Okay, so we're going to take a look at one more film that I thought I should take. Probably should have talked about this one, and I was going back through some of my old videos, like, did I talk about this one or not? Because it seems like I did, but I didn't. But what we're going to talk about, a film that came out in 1981 and was kind of a film that was ahead of its time. Matter of fact, this movie was a big box office flop and kind of laughed off the screen at the time it came out, because, but what's strange is now, living in the climate of AI, in which we can create images that are completely computer generated, that are both actually audio and visual images, because at the point of this recording there are two songs that are on the top of the Christian sales chart and the country sales chart on iTunes that are completely AI. So we're living in this climate that we can make images and sounds that are completely false, not necessarily made or controlled by human beings. Or it has been created by man, but it has taken on a life of its own. That being artificial intelligence. So, the film from 1981 that I want to talk about and show is directed by Michael Crichton. And this was an original story that he developed. He went back and forth between writing novels and directing movies at this point in his life. So from 1981, starring Albert Finney, James Coburn, Susan Day, Lee Taylor Young, it is Looker. Yeah, from 1981, released by the Ladd Company through Warner Brothers. Here is Looker from 1981. Let's roll it. So that was Looker from 1981, directed by Michael Crichton. This movie was definitely ahead of its time. It was Crichton made it because he said that he thought that by the time television commercials in the 1980s had come about, he thought that they were definitely, they had a hidden agenda behind them. And now I look at it these days with, especially with AI going on that's on the internet, they can make you believe anything is possible and very easily deceive people into things. And so this film went into like some weird stuff even for 1981 that possibly could do some things, because the story revolves around Albert Finney, who's a well-known plastic surgeon in Hollywood. And most of his clients are these very beautiful, very attractive women who are constantly, they're actresses going for modeling parts where they have to have the perfect body, they have to have the perfect face and perfect figure, everything. And so they constantly go to him. Well, where this mysteriously things start happening to these actresses, and so at least 3 of them died, and it's ruled that they're a suicide. Because, and then you go on to find out that there's this company who is, their job is to, they're the ones that hire all these actresses to do these commercials, but then they realize that, hey, we really don't need the actresses at all. We can just scan their bodies and we can get them to say and do things perfectly, and they have the perfect body and everything. And so, and one of his clients is Susan Day. She plays the character of Cindy. She's the last surviving one of the clients that Albert Finney is taking care of in the film, but they know that they're out for her too. So they scan her body, but they plan to kill her. But they want to continue using her for TV commercials, but also there's an extra element to this. When whoever watches these television commercials, it reprograms the person's mind by hypnotizing them. It causes the person watching the commercial to look in on the actress's eyes, and then there's a flash of blue light that comes from their eyes that essentially hypnotizes them into buying the product and say, hey, I need that, I need this brand name, whatever it is that they sell. And so they know something's up. And also there's the killer is not, he doesn't use a traditional gun until the end of the film. The gun that he uses is a flash ray gun of some sort that causes temporary paralysis, or hypnosis or whatever it is, causes the person to lose track of time until they are awakened by, contact or whatever. So and you have James Colburn as the owner of the evil corporation that is producing these computer-generated images of actresses. So it was definitely ahead of its time, but at the time it was a huge flop, and it was kind of laughed off the screen, because sometimes I think when people see something like that, they kind of go, maybe it's a little too far-fetched. But here we are in 2025, and we're dealing with things with AI replacing people, replacing people, and possibly replacing singers and actors and actresses already. And so, what's the next thing? Preachers? Politicians? It's not going to stop. So, I think Crichton was onto something at the time, but he did not know how it was all going to end up being. So that was Looker from 1981. So that concludes this video. We're starting in the next video. We're going to do our Christmas movie marathon, but I'm going to have some fun. I did it last year. I'm going to do it again this year. So we're going to dig out some of the Hallmark Channel movies and just kind of rip onto those a little bit. So yeah, so until then, from me to you, see you later.